Greetings, everyone. You're tuned into Anime Dreams, your portal to immersive anime reimaginings and creative fanfiction. Today's thought experiment explores a unique crossover concept. What if Naruko unlocked the power of a mythical Zoan devil fruit? Get ready for a deep dive into alternate timelines, layered abilities, and a redefined shinobi world. Disclaimer: this channel's content is created purely for entertainment and discussion. I do not claim ownership of any anime footage featured. Full credit and rights go to the original creators and copyright holders. Let's dive in. Naruko always believed that the greatest tales needed both a hero and a challenge. Her own journey was no exception. Yet, unlike most stories that end with the hero triumphing over adversity, hers began with it. Everyone on the peaceful island of Konoha knew the tale of what transpired 2 decades ago. How the noble mayor, Minato Namikaze, had courageously protected the island from a powerful devil fruit user who had unleashed chaos. Stories passed from parent to child recounted his sacrifice, how he had given his life to safeguard Konoha. But whispered among those bedtime tales was a more mysterious element. The devil fruit the attacker had used was no ordinary one. It was a unique and legendary type, feared by even the boldest adventurers. Mothers would hush their voices at this part of the story, calling it a demonic devil fruit, one of 9 mythical fruits of extraordinary power. These special fruits, according to ancient legend, held powers that could reshape the world itself. The one used in that attack, they would say, was the most powerful of them all. What made such fruits even more peculiar was what happened after their user passed away. Instead of disappearing, the fruit would reappear right at the spot of its last use, waiting silently for another person to consume it. If destroyed, it would simply emerge again in a random place, always seeking its next bearer. Many believed that if such a fruit remained untouched for too long, it would bring misfortune to the land around it, ruin born from neglect, not from choice. This was why, Naruko was told once she was old enough to understand, the late mayor had made a fateful decision. In his final moments, he entrusted the Akuma no Mi, model, Kyuubi, to her, an infant only days old at the time. Naruko never truly believed the story. Why her? She had been a newborn, entirely unaware of the world around her. Had her family done something to earn such a burden? Or had the mayor simply chosen at random? There were many strong individuals in Konoha, and the fruit, one of the rarest and most potent of the mythical Zoan type, would certainly have attracted eager hands. And yet, she had become its vessel. She had carried that responsibility for nearly 20 years. Though much time had passed, the impact of that fateful event still lingered. The battle between the Kyuubi user and Mayor Namikaze had left a deep mark on the island, changing it forever. Families had been shaken, and sorrow still floated through Konoha's air. Though she was never treated unkindly, Naruko had always known that people looked at her differently. The knowledge that she was the current bearer of the Kyuubi's power kept many at arm's length. Some watched her cautiously, as if expecting something unpredictable. She had grown up without close friends, without a true sense of belonging. But not all had been bleak. The kind and wise Hiruzen Sarutobi, who returned to the role of mayor after the battle, took her in and raised her with care. Some believed he did so to keep a watchful eye on the fruit's new host, but Naruko never cared about their whispers. To her, he was family. Sarutobi loved her deeply and gave her a life filled with guidance and warmth. Thanks to him, Naruko had been able to live as normally as anyone could under the circumstances. Naruko! She jumped at the sudden shout, accidentally losing grip of the saw she was holding. It slipped, nicking her thumb before she dropped it, wincing slightly as she clutched her wrist. A man in his 50s with streaks of gray in his dark hair rushed toward her, his expression full of concern. "Ah. Sorry, kid," he said, kneeling beside her. "Didn't mean to startle you. You've been out of it all morning. You all right? That looks painful, should get it wrapped." Naruko shook her head with a determined smile. "No worries. Just give it a few seconds." She raised her injured hand. Before the older man's wide eyes, the cut slowly sealed itself, the skin and tissue mending naturally. No trace of the injury remained. "See?" she said softly. The man blinked in amazement. "Right. I keep forgetting that you can do that." Moments like this were the best Naruko could hope for, those rare instances when people forgot about the power inside her and treated her like any other young woman. She was grateful to Bayor, her employer for the past 2 years. They had built a comfortable working relationship based on mutual respect. Bayor valued her diligence and kindness, not her mysterious legacy. "I guess I should get back to work. Sorry I've been distracted today," she said. "It's no issue," Bayor replied. "Actually, take the rest of the day off. You've earned it. But something's bothering you, isn't it?" Naruko sighed, brushing her blonde bangs from her face. Yeah. I've been thinking a lot lately. You're leaving, aren't you? Bayor asked, reading her far too easily. Naruko's expression faltered. What? No, I'm not leaving today. Her weak attempt at hiding the truth only made Bayor smile. You've been preparing for months, Naruko. That boat you bought didn't go unnoticed. After a pause, she nodded. Please don't tell anyone. I won't, Bayor said gently. It's your journey to make. Thank you, she whispered. She turned to go, but Bayor called out and tossed her a small pouch. She caught it with surprise. This is way more than what I'm owed. Call it a going-away gift, he said with a warm grin. Naruko was stunned. No one had ever been so generous to her without a reason. Her throat tightened. Bayor. He stepped forward and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're a good person, Naruko. Never forget that. Unable to speak, Naruko nodded, blinking back tears as she turned and left the shop. The island streets were familiar, but today everything looked different. She walked past the people, the shops, the trees, committing every detail to memory. Konoha was a beautiful place. Peaceful, vibrant, and full of life. Isolated though it was, it had everything a person could want. But Naruko's heart longed for more. For purpose. For discovery. She headed toward the Sarutobi home, a grand, wood-crafted house in the center of town. It had always been her sanctuary. The former mayor's study was usually filled with scrolls and memories of the past. Her room, tucked away upstairs, was simple but warm. She climbed the stairs quickly and looked around her small room one last time. She packed carefully, her savings in a small chest, her clothes in one pack, and essential supplies in the other. That was all she would take. Simple, perhaps, but meaningful. The rest she had already stowed aboard her boat. As she reached the first floor, nearing the entrance, a calm but commanding voice stopped her in her tracks. And where do you think you're going, carrying all that on your back? Naruko froze. She closed her eyes, counted down from 10, and opened them again. No, it wasn't her imagination. Naruko could definitely sense the presence of her guardian nearby. Turning her head slightly, she saw him sitting in a wooden chair. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked remarkably casual, dressed in a plain shirt and simple trousers, as though he were just another villager. The only feature that truly stood out was his distinguished beard and the wooden pipe resting between his fingers. I can explain? Naruko offered, her voice slightly nervous as she tried to think of a way to stop her plans from unraveling before her eyes. The calm expression on Sarutobi's face shifted, and Naruko instinctively straightened under his stern gaze. Give me one good reason not to take Enma down from the wall and give you a proper scolding, he said firmly. Naruko's eyes flicked toward the massive wooden staff hanging proudly on the wall, a reminder of Sarutobi's active years. She knew he didn't need it to discipline her. His presence alone had always been enough. She had experienced his strict side once before, and it was not something she ever wanted to revisit. Naruko. This time his voice held no threat, just quiet disappointment. I'm leaving, Gramps, she said plainly. She wasn't going to lie. Sarutobi had done more than enough for her over the years, and he deserved her honesty. You're doing no such thing. But I am, and you can't stop me. The mayor's eyes narrowed, and Naruko held her breath as she saw his fingers twitch slightly. I certainly can, young lady. Naruko shook her head. Maybe now, but not forever. I'll find my way off this island, with or without permission. I didn't spend years training you so you could rush into uncertainty like this. That's not why I taught you all that you know. I'll always be thankful, Gramps, but I'm going. No matter what. Sarutobi looked visibly surprised, which gave Naruko hope. If she could confuse him, maybe she'd avoid a serious argument. I always suspected you had an adventurous heart. Ever since you got interested in sailing, took that internship on the supply ship, and finally bought your own vessel. I thought it was just a hobby. I didn't realize how serious you were. He paused, standing up and walking slowly toward Naruko. She wisely let her travel packs rest on the floor. Why is this so important to you, Naruko? I need to find answers. Why can't you stay here in Konoha? Why? Naruko repeated, her voice growing firmer. Tell me who my parents were, and I'll stay. Show me how to understand my powers, and I'll stay. Help me feel like I belong, and I'll stay. Until that happens, I need to go. Sarutobi winced, as though her words carried more weight than expected. His shoulders slumped, and he suddenly looked much older. Naruko immediately felt a pang of guilt, but she couldn't take her words back. They were her truth. You know I can't answer that, Naruko. Control comes with time, practice, and experience. I wish I could tell you about your parents, but I made a promise long ago. And as for the villagers, you've been pushing them away for years. All valid points. Naruko had heard them before. Ever since she was old enough to ask questions, she had kept asking, and never received the answers she needed. She shook her head. This was not up for debate anymore. Not enough, Gramps. I'm sorry, but my decision won't change. I'm leaving today. Sarutobi looked at her for a long time, conflicted and heavy with thought. After a full minute of silence, Naruko finally spoke again. Please don't try to stop me, Gramps. Please. Not you. Sarutobi's eyes softened. No one is against you, Naruko, he said gently. Naruko sighed. He didn't understand. She had no family in Konoha, no close friends either. The most she could hope for was polite tolerance. No record of her family existed in the village archives, not even the name Uzumaki. Her roots were likely elsewhere. The world was too vast to stay in one place and wonder forever. I'd rather we part on good terms, she said quietly. Sarutobi closed his eyes and let out a long sigh. Naruko held her breath. You can't sail your ship alone for long, Naruko. The sea isn't always kind. I won't be alone for long, she replied. And I'll be safe. Do you even have a log pose? That caught her off guard. What could she say that wouldn't make the situation worse? Sarutobi narrowed his eyes again. You borrowed one, didn't you? I prefer the word borrowed. You're my Gramps, after all. The mayor sighed, rubbing his temples. Which one? The one in the third drawer of your desk, Naruko admitted, sheepishly rubbing the back of her neck. Sarutobi nodded slowly. Wait here. His tone left no room for debate. When he returned a minute later, he held another log pose in his hand. Naruko stared, confused. She had just confessed to taking one, and now he was giving her another? She glanced down at the device. Its needle spun steadily, and the word Konoha was labeled beneath it. This is an eternal log pose to Konoha, he confirmed. For when you come home. Naruko stared at the spinning needle, unable to speak. When a small drop landed on it, she brushed it away. When more followed, she realized they were tears. She looked up at Sarutobi, her guardian, her mentor, and rushed forward, wrapping him in a tight hug. To her surprise, he chuckled softly before embracing her in return, strong arms holding her close. They stood like that for a while, saying what they couldn't say aloud. Even after parting, they held each other's gaze. These old bones can't take too many more hugs like that, he joked. Naruko smiled. She knew better. His strength had never faded. Listen carefully, Sarutobi said. I know the log pose you took leads to the Sabaody archipelago. When you get there, look for a man named Rayleigh. He's gotten into shipcoding. Tell him the professor sent you. The professor? She asked, puzzled. Just pass on the message. He'll understand. Okay, Gramps. The name Rayleigh sounded familiar, but she didn't dwell on it. I keep wanting to give you advice like you're still 8 years old, he said with a chuckle. I guess I should have expected that. Were his eyes misting? It was hard to tell. Stay safe, Naruko. And remember, it's good to seek the truth about your past, but don't forget to live in the present. Don't go all wise elder on me now. I am a wise elder, he replied with a soft laugh. With that, they parted. Naruko picked up her packs. They felt lighter than before. Goodbye, Gramps. Thank you. For everything. She opened the door. Sarutobi's eyes glistened as he gave her a bittersweet smile. I wish you would stay, Naruko. Naruko stopped at the doorway and looked back with a gentle, sorrowful smile. There's nothing for me here. Except you. And with that, she walked out, heading for the shore where her ship waited. That's not true, Naruko, Sarutobi whispered into the quiet house. I just wish you knew that. Despite the bittersweet goodbye, Naruko felt surprisingly light as she made her way toward the harbor. She had said what needed to be said and received something she'd never expected, her mentor's quiet blessing. She could finally leave without regrets. Some villagers gave her curious glances. It was rare to see her in such high spirits while carrying such heavy-looking gear. She soon left the village behind, walking through the wooded path that led to the coastline. Her ship was there, just as she'd left it. A modest two-masted vessel, barely big enough to be called a galley. She had chosen it precisely because she knew every plank and sail. She had worked aboard it for years, saving every bit of money and allowance to one day own it herself. Sailing alone was hard, and she hoped for calm seas. But she wasn't worried. She had plans. Along the way, she found herself whistling a carefree tune. Everything was going even better than expected. When she exited the forest and reached the small pier, her steps slowed. Someone was waiting there. A young man sat atop a travel trunk, his feet crossed, an expression calm but firm. He wore a light haori, simple wooden sandals, and carried a katana at his side. His dark hair was tied loosely at the back. Naruko's steps stopped as she recognized him. Sasuke Uchiha. She narrowed her eyes as she approached. He was blocking the way. "Can I help you?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. Sasuke didn't answer immediately. His gaze stayed locked on hers. "You're leaving," he said quietly. "An impressive observation, Uchiha," Naruko said calmly. She was well aware of Sasuke Uchiha's reputation and didn't hold much affection for him. They had crossed paths before, though they'd never spoken directly. Sasuke was often praised as the town's prodigy, resilient in the face of hardship, having risen to success after the loss of his family. Under the guidance of respected mentors, he had taken over his family's legacy and excelled. People admired him, catered to him, and treated him like nobility. Naruko, however, remained unimpressed. "Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to board my ship." Sasuke looked at her steadily, which only deepened Naruko's mild irritation. "I'm coming with you," he stated plainly. Naruko blinked in disbelief. "Excuse me? You're not invited." "No need to raise your voice," Sasuke replied coolly. "You could use support. How far do you expect to go alone?" "I don't need your support, and I have my own path." "Thanks, but no thanks." For the first time, Sasuke's expression shifted slightly, his brow furrowing. "I can assist you. I have the resources to fund a journey all the way to Fishman Island." "I'm not interested in your money, Uchiha. And what makes you think that's where I'm going?" "You're sailing the Grand Line. Someone like you isn't doing this for a casual voyage. You'll head to the New World eventually, I'm certain of it." Naruko frowned, narrowing her eyes. "And what makes you think you know anything about me? Why are you leaving?" "You didn't answer my question. Do you always ask without giving answers yourself?" "Why are you leaving Konoha?" he repeated. Naruko sighed, lowering her bags to the ground. She rubbed her eyes wearily. "You think I'm after One Piece? Is that the conclusion you've come to after observing me?" "I made no assumptions. That's why I'm asking." "Come now, don't pretend you haven't noticed." "Noticed what?" "The way I'm treated. How can I remain in a place where people would rather I leave?" "Is that because of your devil fruit ability?" Naruko shook her head. "No, but that's as good a starting point as any. There's nothing left here for me. I want to explore the world. But my reasons are my own." "Then why not let me join? What's the harm?" "Because this is my ship. I'm the captain. If you want to come aboard, you follow my lead. If not, then this conversation ends here." Naruko watched as a flicker of frustration passed across Sasuke's face, though he composed himself quickly. "Fair enough. I'll share my reason, and in return, I hope for the same courtesy." Naruko said nothing but gave him a look of cautious interest. "You probably know about the loss of my family," he began. Naruko nodded. "Well, unlike what most believe, my elder brother didn't pass away with our parents. He's still alive." "He is?" Sasuke nodded. "Yes. And he was the one responsible for what happened to our family." Naruko absorbed this new information in silence. She had heard the official story. Itachi Uchiha had perished alongside their parents. That wasn't true, apparently. "My purpose is to sail the Grand Line and become strong enough to find him and face him." Naruko didn't fully understand such a deep quest for resolution, but she respected personal purpose. She herself had reasons for leaving too. "Why not train here? Everyone thinks you're the next great hope of Konoha. There are many powerful individuals in Konoha, that's true. But I've reached my ceiling here. I need real challenges. I need to experience the world in all its diversity. Konoha can't offer that anymore." "Then why my ship? Why not wait for a merchant vessel?" "Because you're sailing the Grand Line. Merchants stick to known paths. They don't venture into danger. I want more than safe passage." "And what makes you think my journey won't be quiet?" "Because I know you're not the subtle type. Whatever your mission is, it's going to leave a mark. Am I wrong?" Naruko studied him thoughtfully. She didn't like Sasuke, but she was beginning to reassess her impression. I'm not aiming to be a pirate, if that's what you're implying. Time will tell. But Naruko was already beyond that part of the conversation. My goal is to find out who my parents were, what happened to them, and to learn to harness the abilities tied to the nine-tailed fox sealed inside me. No matter who stands in your way? No matter what obstacles I face, she answered resolutely. Sasuke nodded as if confirming his thoughts. Then yes, your ship will suit me just fine. I didn't say you could join. Sasuke smiled slightly and walked up the ramp, carrying his travel trunk toward the galley. You kind of did. I did not. Naruko protested, grabbing her own packs and hurrying after him. Be grateful. You just gained a first mate without lifting a finger. Who said you're the first mate? Despite Naruko's vocal objections, Sasuke settled into a room and began helping prepare the ship. He clearly knew what he was doing, and Naruko had to admit, two people made it all go smoother. The galley slowly pulled away from the cove, steering southeast toward the open sea. Uzumaki. Sasuke called from the deck. What now? Naruko shouted from the captain's cabin as she tried to organize her belongings. Come up. You'll want to see this. Naruko sighed. Probably something ridiculous. Still, she emerged onto the deck, only to stop in surprise. The harbor of Konoha had come into view, and it was full of people waving and cheering. At the front stood the mayor, waving energetically. Beside him were Asuma, Sona, little Konohamaru, and others she knew, Bayor, past mentors, co-workers. Even people she didn't recognize had come, possibly for Sasuke or just caught up in the excitement. They were all wishing them a safe and successful journey. Those people, Naruko murmured, blinking hard. If she rubbed her eyes, it was just because something had flown into them. Yeah, Sasuke said quietly. They watched silently until the harbor faded from view. Then Naruko spoke again. Sasuke? If you ever abandon this crew thinking we're not useful to you anymore, I will find you. I won't, Sasuke promised sincerely. I'll help you reach your goals, and achieve mine along the way. That's a promise. Naruko nodded slowly, still watching him with wary eyes. All right then, Captain, Sasuke said with a small grin. Where are we headed? Shouldn't you be checking the pose by now? The pose? Naruko raised an eyebrow. Sasuke looked concerned. You do have a log pose, don't you? Of course I do. What do you take me for? Naruko pulled it from her pouch and held it up. Sasuke examined it carefully. All right, it's working. But we're not following it? We're going to Go Island first. Why? We have plenty of supplies, and that island isn't even on this route. I've sailed between here and Go Island enough to know the way without a pose. And I have a solid reason. Which is? Because once we're past Go Island, I won't be able to navigate any farther. We need a real navigator. That's why we're going there, to recruit one. Sasuke crossed his arms. They'd better be a genius if you want them guiding us through the Grand Line. Naruko smiled confidently. Don't worry. They are. It had been a full day since the beginning of their journey, and things between Naruko and Sasuke had yet to settle down. Would you stop complaining already? I told you I know exactly where we're headed, Naruko said with clear exasperation. And I told you, I've been to Go Island before, and you're a few degrees off course. Both young travelers stood on the deck, facing one another with visible frustration. For the last time, we are not off course. And even if we are, it's barely noticeable. I've taken this route dozens of times, I know what I'm doing. Sasuke muttered something under his breath, which didn't go unnoticed. Naruko's brow twitched. I could seriously toss you overboard. Unlike some people, I can swim, Sasuke replied with a dry smile. And when I get back on this ship, I'll definitely have a few words for you. It won't be fun for either of us. He rested his hand on the hilt of his sword in a show of mock drama. Contrary to what Naruko had initially assumed, Sasuke's weapon wasn't a katana. Its edge was straight instead of curved, and the hilt was sleek and angular, blending seamlessly with the sheath. Naruko didn't know the technical term, but it looked remarkable nonetheless. Sasuke Uchiha. You really want to challenge me? This coming from someone who can't even guide us in a straight line to Go Island? Sure, let's go, bring it on, navigator. Standing within arm's reach, the two exchanged determined glances, clearly ready for a contest of skill. Then, at the same moment, they both turned their heads toward the horizon. A faint shape began to form in the distance, It was Go Island. Naruko frowned slightly. Not a word, she said flatly. Sasuke didn't speak. He didn't need to. The satisfied smirk spreading across his face was more than enough to express his feelings. Naruko sighed and folded her arms as they spent the next few hours making their way toward the main port of Go Island. Although much smaller than Konoha, Go Island was charming and lively in its own way. It featured two main towns and a respectable port known for its appeal to traders and fishermen alike. As they approached the dock and prepared to anchor the ship, Sasuke finally broke the silence. So, who are we meeting here? His name is Shikamaru Nara. Nara, huh? You know him? Sasuke shook his head slowly. Not him, but his father, Shikaku Nara. My family has done some business with the Naras before. I met them once when I was younger. That was before. Well, before things changed. Naruko gave Sasuke a thoughtful look, setting aside their earlier tension. I see. Well, Shikamaru is Shikaku's son. He's around our age. And he's some kind of navigation expert? Not exactly. I said he's a genius and a navigator, not necessarily that he trained for it professionally. It's more of a hobby for him. You wouldn't believe it by looking at him, he's really laid back, but he's been sailing the Grand Line for about 7 years now. It fascinates him. Naruko's faintly smug smile caught Sasuke's attention. He narrowed his eyes. You had something to do with that, didn't you? That's why you're so pleased with yourself. Naruko made no effort to deny it, her grin growing wider. Let's just say I may have gently nudged him in that direction. A long time ago. Sasuke raised his brows. That must have been at least 7 years ago. Exactly. I've known for a long time that I'd be a sailor. I met Shikamaru early in my training. We shared ideas, made a kind of deal. Now it's time to follow up. Impressive, Sasuke admitted. Still, that kind of influence at such a young age? Not bad. One more thing, Naruko added with a warning tone. Don't let him rope you into playing board games. Any kind. Sasuke smirked. I think I can handle a board game, even against a so-called genius. I'm pretty sharp myself, you know. Loser. If he expected Naruko to get riled up, he was mistaken. She only chuckled softly. Suit yourself. You've been warned. Now focus, we're docking. With some careful maneuvering, the two managed to dock the ship and lower the ramp. You wait here, Naruko instructed, raising a hand to stop Sasuke as he stepped forward. This port is safe. No one's going to take the ship. Why do I have to stay? Because I need to talk to Shikamaru alone, and someone needs to be here when the delivery arrives. You didn't even know I'd be coming with you. That couldn't have been part of your plan, Sasuke said, clearly frustrated. Naruko smiled lightly. Plans should always be flexible. Besides, you might as well be useful while you're here. What are you ordering, anyway? Just some refreshment. Go Island is known for its signature brews. Lots and lots of it. Sasuke opened his mouth to object, then paused. After a moment's thought, he nodded. Fair point. Good idea. With that, Naruko left Sasuke behind and made her way inland. The port wasn't particularly busy at this hour. A few fishermen were preparing their boats, and a large trading vessel was being unloaded, but otherwise, the atmosphere was relaxed. The main town wasn't far from the port, and Naruko reached it quickly. Unlike Konoha's tightly packed buildings and crowded streets, the architecture here was open and airy, with ample space between homes and shops. It gave the whole area a peaceful, almost scenic charm. Though not as green as Konoha, Go Island was still far more vibrant than the arid southern islands. After asking around, Naruko made her way to the Nara residence. Shikaku Nara served as the island's mayor. The system here was less democratic and more traditional. Leadership often passed from parent to child unless unusual circumstances arose. Along the way, she stopped at an inn and purchased several barrels of local rum to be delivered to the ship. She figured Sasuke would appreciate the gesture. The Nara estate resembled a well-kept compound more than a home. Surrounded by sturdy walls and several interconnecting buildings, it stood as a quiet statement of legacy. Within the walls, deer wandered the grass fields, occasionally disappearing into the northern woods that bordered the property. Naruko knocked at the outer gate and was soon greeted by a polite attendant, who guided her through a garden path paved with cobblestones. The house itself was built from light wood and solid stone, elegant yet simple. At the door stood Shikaku Nara, wearing a black and white kimono. His hair was tied back, giving his head a somewhat spiky appearance. His expression was calm, if slightly disinterested, but his gaze was sharp. When Naruko reached the patio, the servant stepped back. She bowed in greeting. "Good afternoon, Mr. Nara. My name is Naruko Uzumaki. I was hoping to speak with Shikamaru, if he's available." "Uzumaki, is it?" Shikaku repeated, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. To Naruko's surprise, the relaxed expression faded. His gaze grew calculating, as though he were seeing far more than what was on the surface. It made her pause. Yes. You're from Konoha, correct? You live with Mayor Sarutobi, don't you?" Shikaku, the mayor of the island closest to Konoha, was expected to know of such things. By chance alone, he and Mayor Sarutobi's young ward hadn't met until now. "Yes, sir," Naruko replied politely. "I see," Shikaku murmured, his gaze lingering on her as if searching for something beyond the surface. "And you mentioned you're looking for my son?" "That's right," Naruko nodded. "I'm trying to find Shikamaru. I thought he might be." "Apologies for interrupting, Miss Uzumaki," Shikaku interjected, halting her mid-sentence. Naruko respectfully closed her mouth, curious about his sudden shift in tone. "May I ask something of you?" Naruko had experienced her fair share of unusual requests in her life, so she nodded. "Of course." "Smile," he said calmly. "As warmly as you can." Naruko blinked in surprise. "Pardon?" "Please, just smile. A cheerful one, if you can." It was a strange request, to be sure. What purpose could it serve? Still, she chose not to question it. Smiling wasn't difficult for Naruko. Despite her strong will and sometimes blunt manner, she naturally radiated positivity when she was comfortable. She thought of the kind farewells from her coworkers in Konoha the day before, and almost instinctively, a bright and genuine smile lit up her face. After a few moments, she let the smile fade, and that seemed to satisfy Shikaku, who nodded thoughtfully, as if he had found what he was looking for. "Naruko Uzumaki. How peculiar," he murmured, drawing out her name before shaking his head with a soft exhale. He refocused. "Sorry for the detour. You said you were looking for Shikamaru? He's not here." Naruko frowned slightly. "That's surprising. I was told he wasn't scheduled to travel. I have something urgent to discuss with him." "I never said he left the island," Shikaku said calmly. "Just that he isn't here right now." "Oh," Naruko replied, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Well, could you tell me where I might find him?" "I could," he said, tilting his head curiously. "Would you, please?" Naruko prompted gently. "What do you need with my son?" That was a tough question. She couldn't be entirely transparent, but she didn't want to be dishonest either. Naruko wasn't good at lying, and Shikaku didn't seem like someone she could fool anyway. "It's a business proposal," she said truthfully. "One we talked about a long time ago. Now feels like the right time to bring it up again. May I speak with him?" Shikaku didn't respond immediately. Naruko resisted the urge to fidget under his thoughtful silence. "Are you planning to take my son with you, Miss Uzumaki?" Naruko stood still. His eyes reminded her of Mayor Sarutobi's whenever things got serious. Evasion would not work here. She answered honestly. "Yes." For a moment, Shikaku simply observed her. Naruko wished she could read his mind. "What makes you think he'll go with you?" Many reasons came to mind, none she wanted to list aloud. Shikaku was sharp, clearly, his son had inherited that. "Do you believe he wouldn't?" she asked instead. Shikaku sighed heavily and rubbed the back of his neck. "No. I think he would. You're that girl he traveled with for a month all those years ago, right?" Naruko nodded. It was a guess, but not a bad one. Now, they had reached a standstill. Shikaku could, in theory, prevent Shikamaru from leaving, but Shikamaru was his own person. Forcing his hand would likely create tension, and Naruko had a feeling Shikaku wouldn't risk that. Eventually, Shikaku stood straighter and turned from the doorframe. "Wait here," he said, vanishing inside the house. Naruko remained where she was, the atmosphere thick with familiarity. After several minutes, Shikaku returned carrying a sturdy travel pack, larger than hers but smaller than what Sasuke usually hauled around. He set it down gently in front of her. "This is for Shikamaru. You'll find him either at the docks in one of the lookouts or up in the hills behind the woods. He likes to relax up there and watch the clouds." "Thank you, Mayor Nara," Naruko said, bowing slightly. "But we aren't in a rush. Shikamaru can come home to say goodbye." Shikaku shook his head. "If he knows what's good for him, he won't. And you two should be off the island before Yoshino hears of this. She loves her son deeply, but she has her own way of showing it. She'll understand, eventually. Well, we could find Shikamaru together. That way, you can see him off. Again, Shikaku declined. No. I need to stay here with Yoshino. You go. If you must spend the night, keep him aboard your ship. She won't look there. Naruko nodded. Understood. Should I pass along a message? Shikaku hesitated, then said, Shikamaru knows how much we care. He'll be all right. Of course, Naruko replied, lifting the pack. It was heavy but manageable. One more thing, Naruko, Shikaku added just as she was about to leave. She turned back. Please take care of my son. I will. And tell him we love him. Both of us. He doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. He can always come home. Naruko gave a gentle nod. I'll make sure he knows. Shikaku composed himself, returning to his usual calm expression. Safe travels, Miss Uzumaki. With her farewell said, Naruko stepped out of the compound, relieved to be out from under Shikaku's sharp gaze. Were all mayors this perceptive? She headed for the hills first, they were closer, and the docks could wait. The island was a marvel in itself. Its design gave each home a large plot of land while keeping everything close enough to feel like a tight-knit community. The people were friendly, their greetings warm and cheerful. Even though no one here knew about her devil fruit ability, she was still surprised by how welcome they made her feel. It didn't take long to find Shikamaru. Just as Shikaku said, he was up in the hills, lying on a patch of soft grass that swayed with the breeze. The view was calming, the air fresh. He was stretched out peacefully, hands behind his head and eyes closed. Not the most efficient position for cloud gazing, but definitely the most relaxing. His dark pants and light gray vest gave off a laid-back vibe. His hair was tied up in the same style as his father's. Even when Naruko approached, Shikamaru didn't react. Not until her presence blocked the sun, at which point one eye slowly opened. Hey, Shikamaru muttered. You're blocking the sunlight. Sorry, Naruko said with a small smile, stepping aside to let the warm rays shine on him again. He seemed content and closed his eyes once more. Naruko waited. And waited. After 15 minutes, she began to wonder if he had fallen asleep again. You're still here? He asked suddenly, eyes still shut. Yeah, Naruko replied. Shikamaru groaned and opened his eyes slowly, adjusting to the brightness. His gaze fell on her, first puzzled, then cautious, then surprised. Naruko? Is that really you? Hey, Shikamaru. Shikamaru's eyes swept over Naruko, whom he hadn't seen in several years, before settling on the hefty pack she carried. He seemed to recognize it. You spoke to my dad? Yes. He sends this along with his regards. So you're serious, then? You really want me to navigate for you? I gave you my word, didn't I? I don't go back on my promises. Troublesome. What makes you think I'll go with you? We were 12 when we talked about that. Feels like a long time ago. Naruko smiled. Stop pretending to be so hesitant, Shikamaru. We need to head back to the ship. Let's go. TCH. At least make a real effort to convince me like an adult, Shikamaru muttered. Still, he rose from the ground, stretching with a prolonged yawn before rolling his shoulders. A few loud pops echoed from his back. That didn't sound pleasant, Naruko commented. Wasn't, he replied, yawning again while rubbing his eyes. All right, lead the way. The two walked side by side toward the port, catching up as they went. Shikamaru? Naruko asked suddenly. If you'd rather stay, I get it. I'm sure I could find someone else to help. Don't come if you're not feeling it. Shikamaru sighed. Stop talking nonsense, Naruko. Naruko grinned at that. They continued the walk, sharing stories and laughter. Naruko even mentioned the message Shikaku had left for his son. Shikamaru became quiet, lost in thought. When they arrived at the ship, it was just as Naruko had left it. They boarded and found Sasuke sitting with his back against the mainmast, eyes closed. Oi, you! Wake up, Naruko called playfully, tapping his foot with hers. Sasuke startled, eyes snapping open as he instinctively reached for his sword. Once he saw it was Naruko, he frowned in mild irritation. You're really testing my patience. No way, Naruko replied. You wouldn't actually react. Right? I might, Sasuke muttered as he stood, stretching stiffly. And who's this? Shikamaru asked. Sasuke Uchiha, Naruko replied. He practically insisted on joining me. I'm the first mate, Sasuke added with a self-assured smile. In your dreams, Naruko said with a grin. Definitely the first mate, Captain. Shikamaru observed the friendly exchange, amused, and decided to join in. Hi, I'm Shikamaru Nara, he said, offering a hand. I know. She wouldn't stop talking about you, Sasuke replied, shaking his hand. Really now? Yep. Did you know she missed Go Island by a mile? Claims it was just a minor miscalculation. Oi! I brought us here, didn't I? Naruko shot back. Any more commentary and you're sleeping in the crow's nest. Shikamaru laughed, then reached into the pack Naruko had brought. TCH. He forgot my favorite shirt. Oh well. Sasuke, are the barrels secured? Naruko asked. Sasuke nodded. Yeah. The guys who delivered them helped out. Good. Let's get ready to sail. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. What's the rush? It's nearly dusk. Why not rest here tonight and head out tomorrow? Are we on some kind of deadline? Well, your dad was quite insistent that we head out quickly. He made your mom sound pretty intense. She can be, but dad exaggerates. We'll be fine. She doesn't exactly check every corner of the dock. Alright. Let's stay the night and head out at first light. Sounds good. I'll go find myself a spot. There's plenty of space. With that, Shikamaru hoisted his pack and disappeared into the galley. Sasuke turned to Naruko. So that's our navigator? Yup. They returned to working quietly until Shikamaru re-emerged. Hey, Sasuke, he said, why'd you decide to come with Naruko? Sasuke hesitated, but Naruko encouraged him. Yeah, do tell. Why did you feel the need to impose yourself on my journey? Sasuke frowned, but the teasing tone did its job. Because it'll help me get strong enough to find someone important to me. Shikamaru raised his eyebrow slightly, clearly catching the implication. Itachi Uchiha? Sasuke nodded, expression unreadable. I see, Shikamaru said, then turned to Naruko. And you? What made you leave? A lot has changed since we were kids. Naruko scratched the back of her head. Well, I couldn't stay in Konoha. It was hard living there with all the attention around my powers. What do you mean? You didn't know? I thought I mentioned it years ago. Not that I recall. My bad. Here, watch. Naruko extended her right hand. Her light blue eyes shifted, her pupils narrowing into slits as her irises turned a rich crimson. Her nails lengthened slightly, and the markings on her cheeks darkened. A faint red aura shimmered from her hand. Shikamaru instinctively stepped back, uncertain whether to be amazed or cautious. What? What is this? I ate the Akuma no Mi model, Kyuubi. It gave me the power to transform partially and enhance my abilities. Sasuke sighed. Please don't call yourself Kyuubi person again. It sounds ridiculous. Naruko shot him a look. It's not like the name was my idea. Okay, Shikamaru cut in with raised hands. Can we go back to that transformation thing? Naruko released the transformation and nodded. She began sharing the story from 2 decades ago, explaining her abilities and life in Konoha. By the time she finished, the sun had set. So you're trying to master your powers? Yeah. As you can imagine, practicing in a town that fears anything unusual wasn't exactly safe. Understandable, Shikamaru replied. But you mentioned you're an orphan. How do you know for sure? The old man said so. Could be wrong, but he hasn't lied to me about anything else. And you're looking for answers, right? Yeah. That's part of why I left. Couldn't you find that information in Konoha? Naruko gave him a look of disbelief. I tried. Trust me. I searched every record, every document, even snuck into town hall archives. Nothing about my birth, no mention of anyone named Uzumaki. It's like I just appeared out of nowhere. No one knows anything? Except Gramps, but he won't tell me. Said he made a promise to someone he loved. Probably one of your parents. Exactly my theory, but I can't prove it. And sailing the Grand Line is going to help you? There are other records out there, government ones. I'm hoping to find clues outside Konoha. Why not join the government then? Too long a path, and there's no guarantee. I've got other goals too. Finding out about my past is just part of it. Alright, Sasuke cut in, this is all very emotional, but let's shift gears. Shikamaru, what's your reason for joining us? Shikamaru shrugged. Honestly? I don't want to become mayor. I'd be awful at it, and navigating's what I love. Sailing trade routes got dull fast. This journey could help me figure things out. Naruko nodded in agreement, and Sasuke gave a short, approving nod. Say, Naruko said, 3 people's enough to be a real crew, right? I suppose, Shikamaru replied. We need a name. We're not pirates, Sasuke reminded her. Only pirate crews get names. And you always say it's just a matter of time. We'll think about it when the time comes. Oh come on. We could brainstorm just for fun. I was thinking something like Naruko's epic. Hate to cut you off, Shikamaru interjected, but crew names are usually given by the Marines. Same goes for poster titles. Naruko slumped in disappointment. But what if they pick something totally embarrassing? Sasuke offered a faint smirk. Then I suppose you'll have to accept it. This is so frustrating, Naruko exclaimed, throwing her arms into the air dramatically before letting them fall onto the ship's railing. After a few moments of silence, she tapped the wood a few times thoughtfully and turned back toward her companions with a sudden spark of inspiration. That's it, she declared. What is? Sasuke asked, dreading the answer even though he knew resistance was futile. We may not be able to name our crew, but nothing's stopping us from naming the ship, right? I guess, Sasuke admitted reluctantly. Great. I vote for Naruko's amazing ship of awesomeness. There is no chance we're naming the ship anything with your name in it. Sasuke interjected sharply. It's my ship. I should be allowed to name it whatever I want. Naruko argued, crossing her arms defiantly. Their debate was cut short by Shikamaru's calm, timely voice. How about the doomed? Naruko paused, turning her gaze from Sasuke to Shikamaru with a doubtful expression. That's a terrible name, she said. It sounds ominous. Who'd want aboard something called the doomed? It practically invites misfortune. No, hear me out, Shikamaru said with a lazy wave of his hand. If the ship already has a name like that, it's like reverse psychology on fate. Bad things are less likely to happen because it's already, well, doomed. Get it? Sasuke blinked. That might be the strangest logic I've ever heard you use. Would you rather go with Naruko's name? Shikamaru asked. The doomed it is, Sasuke decided firmly. Hey! I didn't agree to that. Naruko pouted. Come on, Naruko, Shikamaru said with a casual shrug. It's 2 against 1. You suggested a vote, remember? Naruko sighed in defeat. Fine. But if something weird happens to the ship, I'm holding you responsible. With a huff, Naruko leaned against the railing again, gazing out at the harbor. Say, Shikamaru, will your mom check the bars? The bars? He repeated, puzzled. Any bar. I need a refreshing drink or 3, Naruko clarified. I doubt it. She doesn't usually go looking for me, especially not until the next day. Perfect. Then let's go. Lead the way. I thought you'd been here before. I have, but only on work-related trips. We only had time to visit the nearest places around the port. Isn't there somewhere better? Follow me. Wait, Sasuke interrupted. What about the ship? And why are we heading to a bar now? Didn't you just buy plenty of refreshments? You said yourself the ship will be fine. And that stock is for the journey. It'd be a waste to use it now. Plus, we've got a new crew member, we need to celebrate. Come on, Mr. Serious, loosen up. Despite the nickname, Sasuke didn't argue further and followed the other 2 off the galley. Later that night, the 3 friends stepped into a warmly lit and welcoming tavern located near the center of the town, far enough from the Nara estate that Shikamaru's mother wouldn't stumble across them by chance. The venue had a cheerful ambience and soft, rhythmic music playing in the background. A number of patrons were scattered across tables, chatting and enjoying themselves. The barman was efficiently serving orders. They took their seats at the counter and ordered large glasses of a mild fruit-infused drink. The beverages arrived quickly, and they clinked their glasses together in a quiet toast before sipping. For the next few hours, the trio relaxed, enjoying the peaceful mood and chatting in hushed tones as they discussed plans. Naruko occasionally cast glances toward a table nearby, where 2 young women were seated, one blonde, the other brunette. They looked around the same age as the group. Naruko and the brunette exchanged shy, mutual glances every now and then. Noticing this, Shikamaru leaned in with a smirk. Why not say hello? I know her, she's kind and friendly. You've both been sneaking glances all night. Naruko shook her head with a small smile. Not yet. What are you waiting for? The right moment. You might want to move quickly. Those guys behind them have been staring at them for the past hour, and they've had a bit too much to drink. Naruko's gaze sharpened slightly. I said, just wait. Shikamaru shrugged and turned back to Sasuke. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, Shikamaru heard Naruko push back her barstool and rise. The two men who had been watching the young women had now stood up and were approaching their table. Though the women didn't seem afraid, they were clearly uninterested in trying to wave the men off. As the bartender began to move from behind the counter, Naruko had already crossed the floor. She gently placed a hand on each man's shoulder in what appeared to be a light-hearted gesture. However, by their expressions, it was clear the grip was more persuasive than playful. Hey there, fellas, Naruko said in a calm, pleasant tone. I think these ladies would prefer some space. Let's keep things friendly, shall we? The two men muttered apologies and quickly backed down. Naruko escorted them to the door and nudged them outside. A few nearby patrons clapped lightly, and she gave them a cheerful wave before turning to the two young women with a bright smile. Hello there. I'm Naruko, she said, introducing herself as she was invited to join them at their table. Shikamaru chuckled quietly and shook his head. The right moment, indeed. Sasuke, however, stared into his glass. I propose a mutiny, he mumbled dryly. Shikamaru laughed. But then things would get boring. Meh. Besides, Shikamaru added, nudging him gently, Alyssa's been sneaking glances at you. You could always follow Naruko's example. Who's Alyssa? The blonde one, Shikamaru replied. Sasuke glanced at her just as she looked up and met his eyes, offering a friendly smile. Meh, he replied again and returned to sipping his drink. Your loss, Shikamaru said with a shrug. Let's just enjoy the evening, Sasuke muttered. They clinked glasses again and ordered another round. Moments later, Sasuke felt a light tap on his shoulder. He turned to see the blonde girl, Alyssa, smiling gently. Hi, I'm Alyssa, she said warmly. I'm here with Naruko and thought maybe you'd like to join us. Shikamaru, too, of course. Sasuke cast a quick glance at Naruko, who was already deep in conversation with the brunette. She noticed him and gave a thumbs up behind her back. Without offering Alyssa much of a glance, Sasuke replied, No, thank you. Alyssa's smile faltered, and she quietly turned and walked back to her seat. Shikamaru frowned. That was unnecessary. I just wasn't interested. You could have at least been kind. She's a thoughtful person, not just a random stranger. Sasuke said nothing, choosing instead to finish his drink. Oi! Sasuke! Naruko's voice rang out, surprisingly close. He turned. Just in time to intercept the blonde's punch with his face, the impact sent him toppling from his stool and straight onto the floor. Already lightheaded from the alcohol he'd consumed, the hit left him disoriented and the room spinning. He groaned as he tried to push himself up from the ground. Naruko helped him with the effort, grasping the collar of his haori and hauling him upright. Why would you act like that? She was only trying to talk to you. Didn't mean to, Sasuke mumbled, rubbing his aching head. He'd address Naruko's actions, perhaps tomorrow. Wait, Sasuke muttered, a new thought surfacing, did you put her up to it? Of course I did. Naruko responded sharply, clearly frustrated. I was trying to be a considerate captain and set you up, and you had to go and ruin the whole thing. Unbelievable. What are you talking about? Sasuke said, brushing Naruko's hand off his shoulder. I'm talking about you making Alyssa cry, you clueless dolt. Now Allison had to take her home, and they both left. You completely spoiled the evening. Sasuke might have found amusement in how thoroughly his refusal had derailed Naruko's evening, but another detail caught his attention. Wait, the blonde was named Alyssa, and the brunette was Allison? They're sisters. For some reason, Sasuke found that hilarious and burst into laughter. Maybe he had drunk more than he realized. Naruko's irritation faded slightly as she watched the Uchiha chuckle in his daze. The absurdity of the situation dulled her annoyance. She sat on the stool beside him. Go ahead and laugh, Uchiha. But you're the one paying for drinks from now on for ruining my night. As if you'd have had any success, anyway. Just order something before I lose my patience with you. Dash. The sun roused all three of them a few hours before noon, as its heat intensified. The deck of the doomed was scattered with quiet groans as they began to stir. Somehow, they'd found their way back to the ship before collapsing for the night. The first to awaken and stand was Naruko. With tired red eyes and deep shadows beneath them, she rubbed her face and looked over her slumbering crewmates. What in the world did we even do last night? She muttered through a pounding headache. Even with her heightened tolerance, her memory was fuzzy beyond a certain point, right after the girls left. They'd kept ordering drinks, treated the bar to a round, and then things became a blur. Shikamaru, though reluctant, had kept up with them. Now here they were. She nudged the other two on the shins, prompting groans of protest. "Come on," she said hoarsely. "Get up." "Go away," Shikamaru murmured from the floor. "I'm not above tossing you both into the ocean if you don't get it together." That was enough motivation to get the two sitting upright, groaning and holding their heads. "Why are you?" Sasuke began, squinting, still standing. "Unlike you two? I've got a strong constitution. Mythical Zoan abilities, comes in handy." "Brilliant," Shikamaru grumbled. "Time to move. Wash up, freshen yourselves, and let's get going." The two crewmates slowly got to their feet, visibly unstable. Naruko was about to tease them again when a sharp voice called out from the dock. "Hey! You there, in the galley?" She trudged over to the ramp, wincing at the noise. A group of 7 men stood at the bottom of the ramp. "What do you want?" "Keep it down, please. I've got a terrible headache." "Don't act like you don't know us." The frontman shouted, his tone hostile. Naruko squinted at them. "Do I know you?" "We're the ones from last night. At the bar." Sasuke and Shikamaru joined Naruko at the railing, clearly still recovering. "Right, now I remember," Naruko said. "What's your problem?" "You made fools of us. We're not under the influence now, and we've come to settle things." Naruko sighed. "Let me guess. You're here to teach us a lesson?" "Exactly." Naruko turned away, rubbing her temples. "Sasuke, can you handle this? They're giving me a headache." "Why should I? I feel worse than you." "I'm the captain. You're the crew. Get going." Sasuke scowled. "Only because they're more irritating than you right now." Yeah. Go." HN. Sasuke stepped onto the ramp, walking toward the group. "You think you can take us on with just that little sword, pretty boy?" Sasuke's eyes narrowed. "You're loud. That's your first problem. Also, I won't need a sword." With that, he closed the distance quickly. The first man swung his club, but Sasuke effortlessly sidestepped and delivered a swift punch to the stomach, then nudged him aside and into the harbor. The next received a blow to the face that left him dazed and out cold. A third tried to swing a knife, but Sasuke blocked the wrist, twisted the weapon from his grasp, and landed a firm kick that sent him crumpling. He moved through the rest with calm efficiency, evading clumsy attacks and responding with precise, non-lethal strikes that left each of them groaning on the ground. In less than half a minute, it was quiet again. Sasuke rubbed his temple. Finally, some peace. "Get back on board, Sasuke. We're setting sail." Yeah. "It's a ship, not a boat," Naruko shouted back. Sasuke gave one last look to the men on the dock before walking up the ramp and pulling it aboard. The trio began prepping the doomed for departure with all the enthusiasm of people nursing splitting headaches, but none complained. Once they were underway, Naruko gathered her 2 crew members on deck. She held out 3 small cups of rum. "Ugh, get that away from me," Shikamaru groaned. "Come on. Just one toast, for the beginning of our crew." Sasuke sighed and took the cup. Shikamaru reluctantly followed suit. Naruko raised her drink. "I'll master the Kyuubi's power, discover who my parents were, and carve out a place for myself in this world." Sasuke followed, tapping his cup to hers. "I'll grow strong and honor my family's legacy." Shikamaru clinked his cup to theirs. "I'll travel the seas and become a leader my island can be proud of." Cheers. Their voices lacked enthusiasm, but they managed to finish the toast without too much trouble. Naruko wiped her mouth with her sleeve and exhaled. "That was awful. Anyway, here's the plan." The two looked at her, eyes heavy but attentive. "I'm going to my cabin for a nap. You two make sure we're on course with the log pose. Cool?" "Cool." She turned and walked off. "Hey, wait," Sasuke shouted after her. "Why do you get to rest while we do the work?" Naruko paused and looked over her shoulder. "Do I need to make a jacket that says Captain on the back? Because I will." Dear YouTube family. That's all for now, but the journey doesn't end here. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Anime Dreams for more amazing adventures in the world of anime. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep dreaming anime. Thank you for watching.